guys to imagine that this is a driver's seat, okay? And the reason why I want you to imagine that is because the producers of this event came to me, a guy who plays with cars and tells jokes for a living, to tell you guys about the future of the car industry. So I really needed to think about this for a bit. I needed to go back to a comfortable place. Like whenever you guys probably think about a big campaign, you probably go to that comfortable place. And for me, it was my mentor. My mentor, his name was Big H. He was 6'5". He grew up in the boogie down Bronx in a one-bedroom apartment with his single mother and 2 sisters. He graduated high school, but never went to university. And his first job out of high school was changing the light bulbs in the New York City subway tunnels. Literally, as the trains would go by, he's off to the side so he doesn't get killed to go on to his work every single day. Well, as things happened, life progressed with Big H, and he married a girl from the right side of the tracks. And he ultimately became a self-made multi-millionaire. And I was incredibly fortunate to have him come into my life in my university years. And I learned a lot from him by what he told me, but I also learned a lot from him by observing him. I'd sit in his office, watch him take phone calls, and invariably he'd let someone go for about a minute. And then he would bust in with, "Excuse me, what are we trying to fight here? Time or dollars?" And it really dawned on me. If I'm going to talk about the future of the automotive industry, we have to look at what are we fighting? All industries fight time and dollars, but the auto industry, and the reason why I love cars and the car business, is it's unlike any other industry in the world in that you take a hell of a lot more zeros, add it to that industry, and you become the automotive industry. But it also has something very unique. No matter what kind of car you sell, hydrogen, electric, gas, whatever it is, you got to deal with energy. You got to put energy in that vehicle. So in order to talk about the future, I went to another comfortable place for me. And really, before we get to that comfortable place, think about some of the other things that drive energy, like technology. If you really think about it, we all know Silicon Valley, but that's, 30, 40 years old? The car business, the car industry, 100 years it's been the technology business. But like any other business, and Big H would still tell me to this day, it cannot escape dollars. So my comfortable place in trying to start our journey to the future is to go to the past. A 1977 Chevrolet Caprice Classic. Doesn't look very exciting today, does it? But my rocket scientist father was very excited to buy this car in 1976 because it was the best-selling car in 1977. Motor Trend bestowed its Car of the Year award on this, and it was the first car to be designed, engineered, and built after a couple of countries in the Middle East turned the oil spigot off. The US government responded with something called cafe requirements. Now, that is not a fancy place you take a date to in some European city. It is corporate average fuel economy requirements. And basically, it's a target set by the US government that car manufacturers need to hit as an overall goal. But you know what? That's politics. What about the guy driving from Long Island to New York City every day in a 1977 Chevrolet Caprice Classic? This car meant that it had an increase of 55% in fuel economy in 1 year that it was changed. So let's look at this. It's energy we're talking about, but let's kind of unpack the energy. In 1977, this car hit a whopping 17 mpg in the city. Now, how many of you drive Priuses? Not many of you. Wow, I like this audience, real car people. Just as an aside, how many of you drive manual transmissions? I like you. Oh, man, a lot of people really like you guys. Let's talk afterwards. So the CAFE requirement was 17.3 in 1976 and 77. Now let's fast forward 10 years, see how progress went. MPG went up 10%, that's pretty good, but look at the CAFE requirement. Went to 50% increase. The US government said to car manufacturers, you need to get your corporate fuel economy there. Let's go 10 years further into the future. William Jefferson Clinton is the president. Do you remember Mosaic, Netscape, Mark Andreessen, and this was your Chevrolet Caprice Classic? The fuel economy went up a bit, but look at the CAFE requirement. 1.5 mpg, what the hell is going on there? Let's see if we fix it in 2006. Not that much. Actually, 0 in the CAFE world. But 2006 is special for a lot of us in this room for 2 reasons. Number 1, I literally went to sleep last night and it was 2006, woke up, and now it's 2015. How many agree with me there? Yeah, that's what happens when you get older. The other thing about 2006, you guys didn't have one of these, and you certainly didn't have one of these. What you had was a technology that was given to you by the Silicon, I guess, mountain of the north, Canada, called a BlackBerry. And if you were really a hipster before you moved to Los Feliz or Brooklyn, you had a Sidekick, remember the Sidekick? Or the Trio 650, man, I thought I was the man with a Trio 650. But we're gonna put a pin in that, come back to it. Let's go to today, 2015. Virtually no improvement, but look at the CAFE requirement. Now, one could argue the car business, a lot of politics involved in it. Look who's in office now, look at the number. But notice it's 2 numbers. The 30 represents big cars like this and luxury cars like a Mercedes-Benz S-Class. The 39 represents cars like Honda Civic, Hyundai Elantra, cars that hipsters want. So look at the percentage increase. But like Big H would say, it's still about dollars. You gotta sell these people something, right? So let's look at this again, but with numbers. 1977, the average income was $10,000. The average car was $4,000. That means it took 40% of the average income to buy the average car. What happened in 1986? 52% of the average income to buy the average car. It's going up. What happened when William Jefferson Clinton was in office? 65%. Let's go a little farther into the future. It goes down a little bit, 62, but look at today. It's back up, 64, so it's about the same, kind of a push. So now of all the things I'm going to share with you guys, digital agencies, advertisers about the future, how many of you in this room have been told millennials don't like cars, they don't want to buy cars, they hate cars, they want their smartphone, right? How many people have been told that? Not many, obviously. Well, these are all car people, so they've been told this. I know she's been told this a lot. So, I would submit to you that maybe it's something else. It now takes almost 25% more of your income to buy the average car. Maybe it's millennials and young families can't afford the average car. But we're living in the world of technology, right? So let's talk about technology a bit more. Back in 1977, we already talked about this $6,700 car. Oh, what was that? That's a bit of a change. Motor City West. I guess someone's trying to get me off stage. No one wants to know about the Chevy. My father's car actually was exactly that color, and that was the one that was on the Motor Trend cover of the year. Anyway, this car was $6,700, but just 20 years after this car came out, a car company that you and I are going to honor at the end of this program brought out really an incredible technology with a very creative name, Hybrid Synergy Drive. And they wrapped it in a package called the Prius. Odd-looking car, isn't it? Now, this was introduced in 1997 to the Japanese market. It came over here in the year 2000 for the 2001 market at $20,000 US. But this, as we talk about disruption and technology and all the people in Silicon Valley talk about, this wasn't just disruption, normal disruption. This turned a 100-year-old industry literally on its head because fuel economy now, it costs less to drive in the city than on the highway. And look at the percentage increase. In 1 year they did this. Think about that. But it's not just the guys at Toyota that were thinking technology. There were some guys up in the city on the hill that invented products like this that were incensed. They're like, wait a minute, We're the ones that do disruption, not Toyota, not old companies like that. We introduced new technology, and they were mad as hell. So two guys in a room in 2003 sat there and they said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make an electric car, and we're going to name it after a Serbian immigrant that no one's ever heard of until today. And he just happens to be one hell of an inventor. But as one would argue here, Tesla, you would think it's an electric car company, but I would argue it's something significantly more. Now, the next slide I'm going to show you is a bit pornographic, so hold on. That is a naked Corvette. Corvette, I mean, whether you like it or not, it's American as apple pie. But look at it. Look at how big the engine is. Look at how big the suspension system is in the back. Look at the drive shaft. I'm not even showing you the gas tank. I'm not showing you the emissions control stuff. None of that crap. This is what dictates how a car is packaged, why the engine's in the front, the trunk is in the back, and the people go here. Or if you want a Porsche, the engine's back here, there's a frunk, and the people go here. Only two people. But then Tesla, what they changed is gave you a glider. Now this one is their latest, the Tesla X that has all-wheel drive and two motors. But this, think about it, look how small those motors are. Just suspension, and you could even take those motors and put them into the hubs where you don't even need them. Then you have just a raft of batteries. The rest of it, you could package anything you want on top of this. Now, back in, 2009 when we were developing this car, Tesla did something incredibly special. They hired away the guy that was a very talented designer by the name of Franz, that was the chief designer of Mazda North America. Did great stuff, this guy. And he got together with a guy who figured out a way for you and I to exchange money when we wanted to sell old electronics on some auction site, and came up with this. Now, by a show of hands, how many would say that Tesla is a forward-thinking, they just break the boundaries, right? Yeah, most everybody, right? I would argue in this area, wrong. They made a conscious decision here. They could have made this thing look like anything. They could have made it look like this. But here's the problem. This is too far off the plantation. Today, this is what a car looks like. This is the car you want to buy. You tell your wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, I want an Audi A7. I want an Audi S7. I want me a German car. That's why that car looks that way. They don't need to put a trunk in the front. They don't need to put a trunk in the back. They don't need to have it look like it had 8 seats in that car. Well, you saw the thing look naked. But here's what happens when you package for EV. I would argue this is where design is going. This car, it even has technology. The body panels, carbon fiber panels, are made in the state of Washington. I mean, this is way off the Freude am Fahren or ultimate driving machine plantation. And no one's buying them because it looks this way. Maybe in 10 years they will. But this is why people line up to buy a $90,000 car in a recession. Think about that. 90 grand, and through a channel you've never heard of. You buy it directly from the car manufacturer, not the dealership down the street. So not only reinvented the car, but how you buy cars. I would argue the genie is barely just out of the bottle with that one. But going back to Big H, it's all about them dollars. So, 2008, 2 of these companies were put in a pre-packaged bankruptcy. One of them was going to flat out be liquidated. The other had the very good fortune of hiring a guy that used to build airplanes, and his grand plan when he got to Dearborn was put the company in complete and utter hock. Even that blue oval was put up as collateral. He rolled out of New York with every last dollar he could in 2007. Markets shut down when his plane was wheels up. Now, GM and Ford, I would argue, both knew there was a coming doom. Both had a product set ready to go for the next couple of years, but it was Ford that had the money to institute the product plan. Now, let's move forward again, and this is where we get into, okay, we've got a world economy falling off a cliff. We're not moving forward, okay? So we still got energy, dollars, technology, but guess what? Someone else wants to come to the party to play. Who is that person? navigate to 2036 South Westgate, Los Angeles, California. Let's see if
Getting directions to 2036 South Westgate Avenue, Los Angeles.
Wow, it worked! It gives me the route, it shows me some traffic. I mean, that's the usual stuff that you'd get from...
Starting route to 2036 South Westgate Avenue.
It
In
actually
1.8
worked.
miles, take exit 2 towards thinkLA Avenue.
Now think about what we just did here. We got Siri to work with the roof down on the freeway. Granted, we're sitting in traffic, so it's not as loud as it normally would be, but wow, it actually worked. People, this is going to change your life. It's going to change my life. We're in a Ferrari with Apple CarPlay. If this isn't the future, I don't know what is. Well, no traffic. That would be the future. Okay, so let's take stock here. A company that was founded in the 70s by a couple of guys with beards and no shoes that worked out of a garage took over the dashboard of one of the most storied cars in the world. You can buy that today. So forget about the future. Your iPhone that most of you have can now control that car. Just like a month ago, I drove a 640 horsepower Cadillac that gets 30 mpg. That on a racetrack in Wisconsin that has Apple CarPlay. Next year, the list of companies that are not supporting Apple CarPlay will be shorter than the list of companies that are. But guess what? They are not the only ones that want to come and play. There is another app in here which I know it was meant for productivity, but you could entertain yourselves for hours. How do you say I want to buy a Hyundai in Spanish?
Quiero comprar un Hyundai.
How do you say I am going to fly to Norway with Lufthansa in German?
Ich werde nach Norwegen mit Lufthansa fliegen.
But there is a catch. How do you say I need a recipe for spanakopita in Greek?
Just so you know, translations to that language aren't available by voice.
So Google doesn't like my people. Anyway, so we just got another text message.
Here's the message. Smiling face with open mouth, thumbs up sign. Smiling face with horns and confused face. Grinning cat face with smiling eyes, anger symbol, mouth sleeping symbol, tongue dash symbol, nose dash symbol, eyes sparkles.
Okay, either my car just threw up, or I know we were playing with translations, but Android Auto will read out your emojis to you, which, if you have the kids in the back or just for your inner child, it's highly entertaining. So again, let's recap here. A company that was a research project at a university in Northern California 17 years ago took over the dashboard of one of the 5 largest car companies in the world that currently scares the crap out of everyone else today. One of the reasons why is they have their own steel company. They make their own steel. And now these guys have Android Auto. Today, you can buy a Hyundai with Android Auto, but they went one step further by retrofitting. If you have a year-old Hyundai with that same system, you can retrofit your car with Android Auto. And every other car company is going to start doing Android, just like that Cadillac I drove on the racetrack. You can have both Android Auto and CarPlay. If you have a house divided, wife's on iPhone, husband's on Android Auto, you got this going for you. Well, this is an interesting time. We have technology now that is here today. We're not talking about the future, things that are here today, but it's still about dollars. So what do we have now? We've got a couple of things that we've got to deal back in technology. How many people at their cocktail parties talk about the sharing economy? We share our cars. We share our homes. Hell, I'm waiting for people to share pets. There's, Lyft, Zipcar, now Uber. But guess what? Ingolstadt wants to come to the party, and General Motors Detroit wants to come to the party. So walk me through this on a bit. You can literally take your phone out if you have a wonderful date, and you can get yourself, oh, I don't know, a Honda Civic, a Mazda 3, a Hyundai Elantra, and take that date out. Or you can use Audi's car-sharing platform and get a $200,000 Audi R8. Which would you rather have? Now, as much as this is great, remember, Big H, what are we fighting? Time or dollars? Well, there's a solution to the time. I know we tried this trick in an E-Class convertible in Denmark, but really, how many opportunities do you get to drive A, the new S-Class, and B, a car that will drive you? So without further ado, Distronic Plus. So let's set the speed. We got it at 55 miles an hour. And now what's important here is not so much setting the speed or the distance between you and the car in front of you. What's important is the car will semi-autonomously drive itself. So I let go of the wheel, and it reads the white line on the right side and the yellow line in the center of the road, and will steer the car. Look, no hands. And that's a very big truck coming at us, and the car steers clear of it. Don't try this at home. I don't need any legal problems. See that? Traffic going by, cars driving itself. Country roads. See that? So it just tried to go over the line. It's not, I wouldn't call it perfect. It's like taking a teenager out to drive, and then the car will learn, like, okay, we got a car coming here, a van coming here, but it wants to turn. Okay, so let's see if it goes around the corner. Going around a corner, going around a corner, going around a corner. Look at that. It's yelling at me to put my hands on the wheel, but we're trying to prove a point here. Now this is cool and all, but like the S-Class, it brings up rich man's problems. Do you really want a car that drives itself, or do you want to do the driving? Now, both my attorney and the attorneys in San Bruno for YouTube, please implore you, don't try this trick at home. But the reality is, how many of you actually have like an S-Class or a current Mercedes-Benz with Distronic Plus? Audi, maybe? None of you guys? Okay, so none of you are going to try it. But again, this isn't the future. You can buy a car today that will drive itself. But here's the problem, the lawyers. That car that I was driving there, that's a serial production car. But the lawyers turn it off at a couple of seconds, maybe 20 seconds. And you know what? It wasn't like oh, the lawyers screwed us. It's we don't know what we don't know. That's the problem here. So that's why we're back to technology is kind of ahead of both dollars and energy in this case. So I'm sure you guys have heard or read, well, Apple's going to come out with a car, and Google's got the self-driving car. You've probably seen all those demos here. But the reality is, this is not just autonomous cars. How many of you in 2009 would have invested money in Tesla? None of you. And here's why. Because the annual run rate of car sales was 17 million before the recession. In 1 month, it fell off a cliff to 9 million. Yet Tesla figured out how to make it happen. What if I were to tell you that there are 3 startups trying to do the Tesla thing right now, 2 of which are operating in San Francisco, 1 is here in Los Angeles. Now, Tesla pulled off a trick by hiring a talented designer from a well-known car company. Well, guess what? These 3 companies that have a ridiculous amount of VC funding behind them, and many of them are founded by ex-Tesla people who've already been through this dance. They were smart enough to hire not just one guy. I have many personal friends who have been on my show that have built, designed, and engineered the cars you drove here in. They are now working at these startups. Granted, they're in stealth, and you're going to be hearing a lot more of them. So, what is the future of the automotive industry? Well, are you ready for the increasing pace of change? We just went through a journey where it took 30 years to increase fuel economy 50%. And then in 6 years, we more than doubled that, and now there is a whole new crop of players. What is the real effect of technology disruption? Yet we've been told millennials don't want to buy cars, but can they afford cars? Is that the issue? But now it's not just can they afford cars, now there is an option to not afford a car. And then you and I have been buying cars from the same people, the same effectively five people plus Morgan for 100 years. Now there's all these new players. Are you going to buy a car from an established car manufacturer, from one of these guys? You're going to buy a car from these guys? Or are you going to buy it from a startup? Or are you going to buy a car at all? So let's go back to our driver's seat here. The question was posed to me, who's in the driver's seat? I turn the question around to you and say, does the driver's seat even matter? That's the end, guys. Thank you.